Admiral Sarah Mitchell walked through the rain-soaked streets of downtown Seattle, her naval uniform hidden beneath a simple gray raincoat. The 52-year-old officer had commanded aircraft carriers and submarine fleets, but today she was just another person trying to get home after a long day at the naval base. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her sharp blue eyes scanned the empty sidewalks with the trained awareness that came from 3 decades of military service. The meeting at the Pentagon liaison office had run late. Budget discussions and strategic planning sessions always did. Sarah pulled her coat tighter against the October wind and checked her watch. 2200 hours. The streets were mostly empty except for the occasional taxi and a few late-night workers heading home. She had parked her personal vehicle 6 blocks away from the federal building, a security habit she had developed years ago. Never park too close to sensitive locations. Always vary your route. Trust your instincts. These lessons had kept her alive through 2 tours in hostile waters and countless diplomatic missions. As Sarah turned down Pine Street, she noticed the sound of her footsteps echoing off the wet pavement. The streetlights cast long shadows between the buildings, and the steady drizzle made everything look blurry and uncertain. She had walked this route dozens of times before, but tonight something felt different. Behind her, she heard the soft click of footsteps that weren't quite in sync with her own. Sarah had learned to trust her instincts long ago. Someone was following her, trying to match her pace, but not quite succeeding. She continued walking normally, but her hand moved instinctively to her purse where she kept her service pistol. Sarah turned left onto a side street that would take her toward the parking garage. The footsteps behind her continued, confirming her suspicions. She could see the entrance to the garage ahead, its yellow security lights cutting through the darkness. Just 50 more yards. That was when she saw the dog. It was a young German shepherd, maybe 8 months old, sitting in the rain next to an overturned garbage can. The puppy was soaking wet, its dark fur plastered against its small frame. It looked up at Sarah with intelligent brown eyes that seemed far too alert for a stray animal. Sarah had always been good with dogs. Her father had bred working dogs for the military when she was growing up, and she understood their behavior and body language. This puppy was not lost or abandoned. It was waiting, watching. Its ears were perked forward, and its attention kept shifting between Sarah and something behind her. The footsteps behind her had stopped. Sarah made a decision that would save her life. Instead of continuing toward the parking garage, she knelt down beside the wet puppy. "Hey there, little guy," she said softly. "What are you doing out here in the rain?" The puppy immediately moved closer to her, pressing its small body against her leg. As Sarah reached out to pet the animal, she felt something hard and rectangular attached to its collar. Her fingers explored the object carefully. It was a small electronic device, smooth and compact. Not a normal dog tag. Behind her, the footsteps resumed, but faster now. More urgent. Sarah looked down at the puppy again. Its eyes were focused on something over her shoulder, and she could see the tension in its young muscles. Every instinct told her that this animal was trying to warn her about something. "Good boy," she whispered, and stood up slowly. The attack came from 3 directions at once. 2 men emerged from the shadows between buildings while a third approached from behind. They moved with professional coordination, spreading out to cut off her escape routes. Sarah saw the glint of metal in the dim streetlight. Weapons. The puppy reacted instantly. Despite its young age, it moved with the trained precision of a working dog. It darted toward the nearest attacker, barking sharply and snapping at the man's legs. The distraction lasted only seconds, but it was enough. Sarah drew her service pistol and rolled behind a parked car. "Federal officer," she shouted. "Stand down immediately." The attackers did not respond with words. Instead, they opened fire. Bullets shattered the car windows above Sarah's head, sending glass raining down on the wet pavement. She counted the shots and timed the reloading pauses. 3 shooters, probably pistols, amateur spacing. They were good, but not military good. The puppy had taken cover behind a concrete planter, still barking to provide audio cover for Sarah's movements. The little dog seemed to understand exactly what was happening. Sarah waited for the next reload pause, then rolled out from behind the car and returned fire. Her first shot caught the closest attacker in the shoulder, spinning him around. Her second shot went wide as she dove for new cover behind a delivery truck. "Admiral Mitchell," called a voice from the shadows. "You have something that belongs to us. Make this easy on yourself." They knew who she was. This was not a random street crime. Sarah's mind raced through the possibilities. What could they want? She had been working on classified submarine communications protocols, but that information was stored in secure facilities, not carried around in her head. Unless the meeting today, the Pentagon liaison had given her a data chip containing updated encryption keys for the Pacific Fleet. The chip was in her purse, standard protocol for hand delivery to the base commander tomorrow morning. "I don't know what you're talking about," Sarah called back, buying time while she assessed her tactical situation. The puppy was still barking, but now its attention was focused on something new. Sarah followed the dog's gaze and saw movement on the fire escape of the building across the street. A fourth attacker, probably with a rifle, getting into position for a clean shot. Sarah needed to move, but she was pinned down between the three ground-level attackers and the sniper above. The parking garage was still 30 yards away, with no cover in between. Her service pistol had 11 rounds left, and she was facing at least 4 armed opponents. The puppy suddenly stopped barking and began to whine softly. Sarah looked at the small animal and realized it was injured. Dark blood was spreading across its left hind leg where a bullet fragment had caught it. Something cold and angry settled in Sarah's chest. These people had just shot a puppy. She made another decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to retreat to the parking garage, Sarah began moving toward the attackers. She used the parked cars as cover, advancing in short rushes while laying down covering fire. The attackers were not expecting an aggressive response from someone who was outnumbered 4-1. Sarah's military training took over completely. She moved with the smooth efficiency of someone who had commanded naval battles and coordinated complex operations under fire. Each movement was calculated. Each shot was precise. Each decision was made without hesitation. The wounded attacker was trying to reach his dropped weapon when Sarah's third shot put him down permanently. She rolled left as the sniper's bullet sparked off the pavement where she had been a moment earlier. The puppy was crawling toward her, dragging its injured leg but still trying to help. Sarah could see the determination in its young eyes, the refusal to give up despite being hurt and scared. "Stay down, boy," she whispered as she reloaded behind a delivery van. The remaining 2 ground attackers were trying to flank her position. Sarah could hear their footsteps splashing through puddles as they moved to surround the van. She had maybe 10 seconds before they would have clear shots from both sides. That was when the puppy did something extraordinary. Despite its injury, the young dog limped toward the electronic device that had fallen from one of the attacker's pockets. The puppy grabbed the small radio in its teeth and bit down hard, crushing the plastic casing and destroying the device. Immediately, Sarah heard cursing from both directions. The attackers had just lost their ability to coordinate with each other and with their sniper. Sarah used the confusion to break from cover again. She moved fast and low, using every shadow and parked car to mask her approach. The attackers were good, but they were not prepared for a target who fought back with professional skill and tactical awareness. Her fourth shot took down the attacker on her left. Her fifth shot shattered the streetlight that was giving the sniper a clear view of the area. Darkness fell across the street like a protective blanket. The last ground attacker panicked and began firing wildly in her direction. Sarah counted 8 shots before she heard the click of an empty magazine. She stood up calmly and put 2 rounds center mass. The man dropped without a sound. The sniper was still out there, but he had lost his night vision advantage when the streetlight went out. Sarah gathered up the injured puppy and began moving toward better cover. That was when she heard the sirens. Someone had called the police, and multiple units were responding. Sarah could see the flashing lights reflecting off the wet buildings as the patrol cars approached. She holstered her weapon and pulled out her military identification. The puppy whimpered softly in her arms, its small body warm against her chest despite the cold rain. Sarah looked down at the brave little animal that had tried so hard to help her. "Who are you, boy?" she whispered. "And how did you know?" As the police cars arrived and officers began securing the scene, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. All 3 of the dead attackers were wearing small earpieces, professional communication gear. This had been a coordinated operation by people with serious resources and training. The puppy looked up at her with those intelligent brown eyes, and Sarah realized that this was not over. Someone had sent professional killers after her for the encryption keys she was carrying. Someone with enough money and connections to hire former military operators for an assassination. The rain continued to fall as the police began their investigation. Sarah stood under the yellow crime scene tape, holding the wounded puppy and trying to understand what had just happened. She had survived, but barely. And if it had not been for the warning from this mysterious young dog, she would be dead on the wet pavement with 3 bullets in her back. Detective Ray Gonzalez approached her with a notepad and a grim expression. "Admiral Mitchell, I'm going to need to get your statement about what happened here. But first, we should get you and that dog to a hospital. You both look like you've been through hell." Sarah nodded, but her mind was already working ahead. Someone had tried to kill a flag officer of the United States Navy to steal classified encryption keys. This was not just a street crime. This was an act of war. And the puppy in her arms might be the only witness who could help her figure out who was responsible. The emergency room at Seattle General Hospital buzzed with controlled chaos as medical staff treated the wounded puppy and checked Admiral Mitchell for injuries. Sarah sat on an examination table while a nurse cleaned a small cut on her forehead, but her attention was focused entirely on the young German shepherd being treated at the veterinary station that had been hastily set up in a corner of the trauma bay. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, an emergency veterinarian who had been called in specifically for this case, worked carefully to remove bullet fragments from the puppy's leg while a police forensics team waited nearby to collect the evidence. The small dog remained remarkably calm during the procedure, as if it had been trained for exactly this type of situation. "This is unusual," Dr. Walsh said, looking up from her work. "The dog's muscle tone and reflexes suggest extensive training, but it's only about 8 months old. Most working dogs don't begin advanced training until they're at least a year old." Detective Gonzalez looked up from his notepad. "What kind of training are we talking about, Doc? Military or law enforcement?" The way it responded to the gunfire, the tactical awareness, the protective behavior toward the Admiral. This isn't a pet that got lucky. This is a working dog that was specifically placed in that location. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. "Someone sent that dog to protect me? Or to watch you?" Detective Gonzalez said grimly. "We found this in the collar device that the forensics team recovered." He held up a small memory chip in an evidence bag. "Military-grade encrypted storage. We'll need to get this to federal authorities to have it decoded." The puppy looked up at Sarah from the examination table, its brown eyes alert despite the sedation. There was something almost human in its gaze, an intelligence that went beyond normal canine awareness. Sarah found herself thinking about her father's old stories about the dogs he had trained for special operations. Some of those animals had been remarkable, capable of independent decision-making and complex problem-solving under extreme stress. "Admiral," Detective Gonzalez continued, "we've been in contact with Naval Intelligence. They're sending a team to debrief you, but they wanted me to ask about the encryption keys you were carrying." Sarah's hand moved instinctively to her purse. The data chip was still there, secure in its tamper-proof case. "The keys are safe. But how did you know about them?" "We didn't. The attackers did. We found planning documents in their vehicle. Detailed intelligence about your schedule, your route, even the fact that you were carrying classified material. This was a sophisticated operation." Dr. Walsh finished bandaging the puppy's leg and looked up with a puzzled expression. "There's something else you should know. This dog has a microchip, but it's not a standard pet identification chip. The frequency and data structure suggest military or intelligence agency tracking." "Can you read it?" Sarah asked. "Not with veterinary equipment. You'll need specialized scanners to decode military chips. But there's more." Dr. Walsh pointed to a small scar on the puppy's neck. "Fresh surgical site, maybe 3 weeks old. Someone recently implanted something else under the skin." Detective Gonzalez reached for his radio. "I'm calling the federal team now. This is bigger than a simple robbery attempt." As if summoned by his words, the emergency room doors burst open and, for people in dark suits, entered with the brisk efficiency of federal agents. Sarah recognized the type immediately. These were not local FBI. These people had the bearing and awareness of military intelligence, or special operations. The lead agent, a tall woman with short blonde hair and cold gray eyes, approached Sarah's examination table. Admiral Mitchell, I'm Agent Karen Price, Defense Intelligence Agency. We need to discuss what happened tonight. I've already given my statement to Detective Gonzalez, Sarah replied carefully. The local police don't have the clearance level to handle this case. We're taking over the investigation. Agent Price looked at the puppy, and Sarah saw something flicker across her expression. Recognition, maybe, or surprise. You know this dog, Sarah said. It was not a question. Agent Price hesitated for just a moment too long. The animal will need to be transferred to a secure facility for evaluation. No. Sarah's voice carried the unmistakable authority of a flag officer. This dog saved my life. It stays with me until I understand what's going on. Admiral, you don't understand the security implications. I understand that someone tried to kill a United States Navy admiral to steal classified encryption keys, and the only reason I'm alive is because of this puppy. I also understand that you people seem to know more about this animal than you're telling me. Sarah stood up, and despite being shorter than Agent Price, her command presence filled the room. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to explain exactly what this dog is, who sent it, and why professional killers knew about my mission tonight. The other agents had positioned themselves around the room with the subtle spacing of people preparing for potential trouble. Dr. Walsh and Detective Gonzalez exchanged glances and began backing toward the door. Agent Price made a decision. Dr. Walsh, Detective Gonzalez, you'll need to sign non-disclosure agreements before you leave. National Security Classification. She turned back to Sarah. Admiral, the dog is part of a classified program. Project Cerberus. It's a joint operation between DIA and Naval Intelligence. I've never heard of Project Cerberus. Because you didn't have need to know. Until tonight. Agent Price pulled out a tablet and showed Sarah a series of photographs. 3 months ago, we intercepted communications suggesting that foreign intelligence services were targeting senior naval officers for assassination or kidnapping. The goal was to obtain encryption keys and operational intelligence about Pacific Fleet communications. Sarah studied the photos. They showed surveillance images of herself and other flag officers, detailed schedules, route analyses. How many officers were targeted? 12 initially. 7 have since been moved to secure facilities or had their operational responsibilities changed. You were considered low risk because your assignment was temporary and your access was limited. But someone found out about the encryption keys. The mission tonight was classified at the highest levels. Only 6 people knew you were carrying those keys. Agent Price paused. We have a leak somewhere in the chain of command. Sarah looked down at the puppy, which was watching the conversation with obvious interest. So you put surveillance dogs on all the targets? Not surveillance. Protection. Each animal was trained for a specific officer, programmed with their voice patterns, movement signatures, daily routines. They were designed to blend into urban environments while providing early warning of threats. Program. Dr. Walsh had stopped backing toward the door. Are you saying these are cyborg dogs? Agent Price shot her a sharp look. The animals retain full biological function. The enhancements are purely technological. Advanced sensory packages, communication equipment, tactical decision-making algorithms. Sarah felt the pieces clicking together. The device in the collar wasn't just a tracker. It was a communication system. This dog was in contact with your people. Continuously. Until the signal went dead 23 minutes ago, during the attack. 23 minutes. Sarah checked her watch. That's about when the puppy bit the attacker's radio equipment. Agent Price nodded. The dog recognized the threat and prioritized your survival over maintaining contact with our control center. It made an independent tactical decision to go dark rather than risk exposing your position. Detective Gonzalez stepped forward. So this whole thing was a setup? You used the Admiral as bait? No. Agent Price's voice was sharp. The Admiral's mission was legitimate and necessary. But we suspected that someone with high-level access was feeding information to hostile forces. Tonight confirmed it. Sarah knelt down beside the examination table and gently petted the puppy's head. The small animal leaned into her touch, and she could feel the warmth of trust and loyalty in its response. What's his name? Designation K, 9-7. But the training staff called him Rex. Rex. Sarah looked into the puppy's intelligent brown eyes. You're a good boy, Rex. A very good boy. The puppy's tail wagged weakly, and Sarah realized that despite all the technology and training, this was still a young dog that wanted approval and affection from the human it had been assigned to protect. Dr. Walsh cleared her throat. Agent Price, if this animal is as valuable as you're suggesting, it needs proper medical care. The surgery was successful, but Rex will need several days of recovery time and physical therapy. He'll be transferred to a military veterinary facility. No, Sarah interrupted again. Dr. Walsh is right. Rex needs recovery time, and he's obviously imprinted on me as his protected target. Separating us now could damage his psychological conditioning. Agent Price looked frustrated, but she also looked like someone who understood military psychology and animal behavior. We can arrange for medical support at a secure location. My home is secure. I have military-grade security systems, and Rex will be more comfortable in a civilian environment during his recovery. Admiral, we still don't know who leaked the information about your mission. Someone with high-level clearance tried to have you killed tonight. Until we identify the source, you're still at risk. Sarah stood up, and her expression was steel. Then, I suggest you find the leak quickly, because I'm not hiding from whoever did this, and I'm not abandoning the dog that saved my life. Agent Price was quiet for several moments, clearly weighing options and risks. Finally, she nodded. Very well. But you'll have a protection detail, and Rex will need to maintain contact with our monitoring systems. Agreed. But I want full briefings on Project Cerberus, complete files on the other targeted officers, and real-time updates on your investigation. Some of that information is above your clearance level. My clearance level just went up. Someone tried to kill me for encryption keys that I was hand-delivering on orders from the Pentagon. That makes me a primary witness in a matter of national security. Sarah's voice carried the authority of 3 decades of military command. I'm not going to sit on the sidelines while you people figure out who wants me dead. Agent Price finally smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Admiral, I think you and Rex are going to work well together. Both of you seem to have a talent for independent decision-making. Rex looked up at Sarah and barked once softly. It sounded almost like agreement. The emergency room began to empty as the immediate crisis wound down. Dr. Walsh finished her paperwork and prepared to release Rex into Sarah's care. Detective Gonzalez closed his initial report and prepared to turn the case over to federal authorities. Agent Price made quiet phone calls to coordinate security arrangements. But Sarah was thinking ahead to the bigger picture. Someone with access to highly classified information had tried to have her killed. The attempt had failed, but only because of an experimental military dog that had been assigned to protect her without her knowledge. Now she had to figure out who had betrayed her mission, why they wanted those encryption keys so badly, and what they were planning to do next. Because if they were willing to kill a flag officer for those keys, they were planning something much bigger than a simple intelligence theft. Rex struggled to his feet on the examination table, favoring his bandaged leg, but clearly determined to stay close to Sarah. The puppy looked up at her with absolute trust and loyalty, ready to follow her wherever the investigation might lead. Sarah realized that she now had the most unusual partner she had ever worked with. But, given what they had already survived together, she had a feeling that Rex was exactly the kind of backup she was going to need. Sarah's waterfront home in Magnolia overlooked Elliott Bay with a clear view of the Seattle skyline. The house had been her father's, built in the 1960s when he was training military dogs for Vietnam operations. She had inherited it along with his extensive knowledge of working dog behavior, and now she was grateful for both. Rex limped carefully around the living room, exploring his new environment with the methodical thoroughness of a trained operative. Despite his injury and young age, the puppy checked every corner, every window, every possible entry point with professional attention to detail. He's mapping the territory, Sarah observed to Agent Price, who was overseeing the installation of additional security equipment. Advanced spatial recognition training. He'll have the complete layout memorized within an hour, including sight lines, acoustics, and defensive positions. Agent Price looked up from a tablet displaying building schematics. The question is whether he'll be able to function effectively while injured. Rex answered that question by positioning himself at the front window with a clear view of the street approach, then settling into an alert rest position that allowed him to watch both the interior and exterior simultaneously. His ears remained perked forward, tracking sounds that the humans couldn't detect. Dr. Walsh had accompanied them to monitor Rex's condition during the transition. She knelt beside the puppy and checked his bandages. The wound is clean, and the bleeding has stopped, but he shouldn't be putting weight on that leg for at least 48 hours. Rex looked at her with patient tolerance, but his attention never fully left the security perimeter he had established. Sarah realized that the dog was working through pain because he understood his mission was not complete. Agent Price's communication earpiece crackled, and she listened to a brief transmission before turning to Sarah. We've identified the 3 attackers. Former military contractors, all with special operations backgrounds. They were hired through a shell company that traces back to offshore accounts. Professional killers with military training, Sarah said. Someone with serious money wanted those encryption keys. It gets worse. We've been monitoring communications since the attack. There are at least 2 more teams in the Seattle area, and they're not backing down because their first attempt failed. Sarah felt Rex tense beside her, and she looked down to see the puppy's ears flicking toward the front of the house. The dog had detected something that the human security sensors had not yet registered. Rex hears something, she said quietly. Agent Price immediately activated her radio. Control, this is Price. We may have movement on the perimeter. Rex stood up carefully, favoring his injured leg, but moving with purpose toward the front window. His body language had shifted from alert to aggressive readiness. The fur along his neck began to rise. Sarah moved to the window and peered through the reinforced glass. The street appeared normal. A few parked cars, a jogger in the distance, the usual evening activity of a quiet residential neighborhood. But Rex was focused on something specific. The puppy gave a single, sharp bark and looked directly at a white delivery van parked 3 houses down. To human eyes, it looked perfectly normal. But Rex had identified it as a threat. Agent Price spoke into her radio. Run plates on a white delivery van, Washington tags. She pulled out binoculars and read off the license number. Within seconds, her earpiece crackled back. Stolen vehicle, reported missing this morning from a catering company in Tacoma. There's your second team, Sarah said grimly. Rex barked again, this time looking toward the back of the house. He had detected threats from multiple directions. Agent Price was already coordinating responses. Control, we have hostile surveillance on 2 vectors. Requesting immediate backup and perimeter security. Sarah knelt beside Rex and gently scratched behind his ears. Good boy. Very good boy. You're earning your keep tonight. The puppy leaned into her touch for just a moment, then returned his attention to the tactical situation. Sarah could see the conflict in his young mind between the natural desire for comfort and affection and his trained mission to provide protection. Dr. Walsh looked nervous. Should we be evacuating? This house doesn't seem like a safe place to be if people are watching it. This house is safer than most military facilities, Sarah replied. My father designed it with exactly this kind of situation in mind. She moved to a wall panel and entered a security code. Hidden steel shutters began sliding down over all the windows, while motion sensors and perimeter alarms activated throughout the property. The house transformed from a comfortable home into a defensive fortress within minutes. Rex watched the security measures deploy with obvious approval. His tail wagged slightly, the first sign of relaxation he had shown since they arrived. Agent Price received another radio transmission. Control reports multiple vehicles converging on this area. At least 6 hostiles, possibly more. They're not just watching anymore. They're preparing for an assault. Sarah felt the familiar calm of combat readiness settle over her. She had commanded ships under fire and coordinated complex military operations in hostile waters. This was just a different kind of battlefield. What's our backup situation? She asked. FBI tactical team is 20 minutes out. Local police are being diverted for their own safety. Military response team is en route from Joint Base Lewis McChord, but they're at least 30 minutes away. So we're on our own for the next half hour. Agent Price nodded grimly. The house security systems will help, but if they have military-grade weapons and explosives. Rex suddenly stood up moved to the center of the room, his body language shifting to high alert. His ears were turned toward the basement, and he was focused on something below the main floor. Sarah frowned. There's nothing in the basement except storage and the old bomb shelter that my father built during the Cold War. The puppy barked twice and looked directly at her, then moved toward the basement stairs. This was not random behavior. Rex was trying to communicate something specific. Sarah followed the dog downstairs, with Agent Price and Dr. Walsh close behind. The basement was exactly as she remembered it. Concrete walls, steel support beams, and boxes of her father's old military equipment and training materials. Rex limped directly to the far wall and began pawing at a section that looked identical to the rest of the concrete surface. But when Sarah examined it closely, she could see faint marks around the edges of what appeared to be a hidden panel. My father never mentioned a hidden room, she said, running her fingers along the marks. Agent Price pulled out a small device that looked like a sophisticated stethoscope. Ultrasonic wall scanner. If there's a hidden space, this will detect it. The scanner immediately began beeping rapidly when she held it against the wall section that Rex had identified. Hollow space behind this panel, approximately 8 feet by 12 feet. Rex barked once and sat down, clearly satisfied that he had successfully communicated the discovery. Sarah found a small lever concealed behind a loose stone in the wall. When she pulled it, the concrete panel swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a hidden room that her father had never told her about. The space contained military communication equipment, weapon storage racks, and a sophisticated computer system that looked far more advanced than anything from her father's era. This was recent installation, probably within the last 5 years. Agent Price examined the equipment with growing amazement. This is current military hardware. Encrypted communication systems, satellite uplinks, even classified computer terminals. Sarah powered up the main computer system, and it immediately requested biometric identification. She pressed her thumb to the scanner, and the system came alive with a recorded message in her father's voice. Sarah, if you're seeing this, then someone has threatened you directly, and Rex has led you to this room. I've been working with Naval Intelligence for the past 8 years, providing security consultation for Project Cerberus. This facility was established as an emergency command center in case the main project was compromised. Agent Price looked shocked. Your father was part of Project Cerberus. The recording continued. Rex was trained specifically for you, using behavioral patterns and voice recognition based on years of observation. He's not just a protection dog. He's a partner who has been prepared for exactly the situation you're now facing. Sarah looked down at Rex, who was watching the recording with obvious recognition. The puppy had known about this room all along. He had been waiting for the right moment to reveal it. The equipment in this room will allow you to coordinate your own protection and investigation without depending on outside support that may be compromised. Someone with high-level access has betrayed Project Cerberus, and traditional command structures cannot be trusted. Agent Price was studying the communication equipment. This setup can tap into secure military networks, monitor intelligence communications, even track the movements of other Project Cerberus assets. Which means we can find out who's behind the attacks without waiting for official investigations, Sarah realized. Rex barked approvingly and moved to a specific computer terminal. The screen showed a map of Seattle with multiple red markers indicating hostile positions around the neighborhood. He knows how to operate the equipment, Dr. Walsh said in amazement. Sarah sat down at the main terminal and began accessing Project Cerberus files. Within minutes, she had a complete picture of the program, including profiles of all 12 targeted officers and their assigned protection dogs. What she found made her blood run cold. 3 of the other officers had been killed in the past week, not in direct attacks, but in accidents and incidents that had been written off as unrelated events. Car crashes, gas leaks, food poisoning. The pattern was only visible when viewed as part of the larger picture. Someone is systematically eliminating everyone with access to Pacific Fleet encryption protocols, she said. Agent Price leaned over her shoulder to read the files. 9 officers dead or missing, 3 still under protection. You're one of the last people alive who can access those encryption keys. Rex moved to the weapons storage area and began pawing at a specific rifle case. When Sarah opened it, she found a specialized sniper system with advanced optics and communication gear. "My father trained you for more than just early warning, didn't he?" she said to the puppy. Rex looked at her with those intelligent brown eyes and barked once. Yes, the house security system chimed with an proximity alert. Multiple vehicles had entered the neighborhood perimeter, and they were moving into assault positions. Sarah began powering up the full defensive systems that her father had installed. Hidden cameras provided complete surveillance coverage, automated defensive measures activated throughout the property, and secure communication links connected her directly to military command structures that bypassed normal intelligence channels. Agent Price coordinated with the approaching backup teams, while Sarah established contact with Pacific Fleet Command. Dr. Walsh monitored Rex's condition and prepared medical supplies for what was clearly going to be a prolonged engagement. But Sarah was already thinking beyond the immediate battle. Someone with access to the highest levels of naval intelligence was orchestrating these attacks. They had nearly succeeded in obtaining encryption keys that would compromise the entire Pacific communications network. Rex positioned himself at the central monitoring station, his injured leg forgotten as he focused on the tactical displays. The puppy was no longer just a wounded animal in need of protection. He was an active partner in a military operation, trained and equipped for exactly this situation. Sarah realized that her father had been preparing for this moment for years, working with intelligence agencies to create a backup plan that could function independently if the normal command structure was compromised. Now she and Rex would have to use everything they had learned to survive the next few hours and identify the traitor before more people died. The assault on the house was about to begin, but Sarah was no longer a victim running from unknown attackers. She was a flag officer with military resources and an extraordinary partner, fighting back against whoever had betrayed her country and her fellow officers. Rex looked up at her and barked once, ready for battle. The attack began at exactly 20:47 hours with a coordinated assault from 3 directions. Sarah watched the tactical displays as 6 vehicles positioned themselves around the house, while armed figures moved into flanking positions through the neighboring properties. Rex sat beside her at the command console, his injured leg carefully positioned, but his attention completely focused on the multiple camera feeds. The puppy's ears twitched as he tracked sounds that the electronic sensors hadn't yet detected. 12 hostiles confirmed, Agent Price reported from her monitoring station. Professional movement patterns, military-grade equipment. They're treating this like a special operations mission. Sarah activated the house's defensive systems with the calm efficiency of someone who had commanded ships under fire. Exterior floodlights illuminated the entire property, motion sensors locked onto moving targets, and automated warning systems began broadcasting federal security warnings. Unknown personnel. This is a federal protection site. The recorded announcement echoed across the neighborhood. You are ordered to withdraw immediately or face military response. The attackers ignored the warnings and continued their advance. Rex suddenly stood up and moved to a specific camera control. Using his nose, he switched the view to a thermal imaging display that revealed 2 additional figures hidden behind a delivery truck that the visible light cameras had missed. 14 hostiles, Sarah corrected, grateful for her partner's enhanced detection capabilities. Agent Price spoke into her radio. "Control, we have 14 confirmed hostiles in assault formation. Where is our backup?" The response crackled through the speakers with static and interference. Backup teams are being delayed by coordinated traffic incidents throughout the city. Multiple accidents have blocked primary response routes. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. They're jamming our backup. This isn't just an assault on the house. It's a comprehensive operation to isolate us completely. Dr. Walsh looked up from her medical station with obvious worry. "How long can we hold them off on our own?" "As long as necessary," Sarah replied with the confidence that came from 3 decades of military experience. She activated additional defensive measures that her father had installed, but she had never expected to use. Steel barriers rose from concealed positions around the property perimeter. Hidden speakers began broadcasting disorienting audio signals designed to interfere with tactical communication. Motion-activated defensive systems came online, ready to respond to unauthorized movement with less than lethal deterrent measures. Rex moved to a wall-mounted device that looked like a sophisticated radio system. He pressed a specific control with his paw, and immediately the tactical displays showed new information. Real-time positions of all Project Cerberus assets within a 50-mile radius. He's calling for backup from other protection teams, Sarah realized. Agent Price monitored the communications. 3 other protection dogs are responding, but their handlers are either dead or missing. The dogs are operating independently. Sarah studied the displays and felt a mixture of admiration and sadness. Somewhere in the Seattle area, 3 highly trained dogs were trying to complete their missions without human guidance, responding to Rex's call for assistance despite their own dangerous situations. The first direct assault came against the front entrance. 2 attackers approached with shaped explosive charges, moving with the coordinated timing of special operations personnel. Sarah watched them advance on the thermal display while Rex monitored audio sensors for additional threats. When the explosives detonated, the reinforced door held, but the concussion wave shattered windows throughout the neighborhood. Sarah activated the emergency response protocol that would automatically contact military authorities and provide them with real-time tactical information. Phase 1 defensive measures, she announced, engaging automated systems that her father had designed for exactly this scenario. High-pressure water cannons emerged from concealed positions and began targeting the attackers with streams powerful enough to knock a person off their feet. Blinding strobe lights activated throughout the property perimeter. Sound generators began broadcasting ultrasonic frequencies that would disorient anyone not wearing protective equipment. The attackers fell back temporarily, but Sarah could see them regrouping for a more systematic assault. They had come prepared for sophisticated defenses. Rex suddenly began barking in a specific pattern that Sarah recognized from her father's old training manuals. Warning signals for airborne threats. Helicopter, Agent Price confirmed, monitoring air traffic control frequencies. Approaching from the north, no transponder signal. Sarah activated the final defensive system that her father had installed. Military-grade anti-aircraft detection equipment locked onto the helicopter and began broadcasting targeting warnings to any aircraft in the area. Unknown aircraft, you are entering restricted airspace. Land immediately, or you will be engaged by defensive systems. The helicopter ignored the warnings and continued its approach. Rex moved to another control panel and activated what appeared to be a sophisticated communication system. He's contacting military air defense, Agent Price realized, monitoring the encrypted signals. Requesting immediate air support. Sarah felt a surge of pride in her remarkable partner. Rex was not just defending their position. He was coordinating a comprehensive military response using systems and protocols that most human operators would need months to master. The helicopter attack came in the form of armed personnel rappelling onto the roof while the aircraft provided covering fire. Sarah could hear the distinctive sound of automatic weapons as the assault team tried to breach the upper floors of the house. Rex limped quickly to the central command station and began operating multiple systems simultaneously. Roof-mounted defensive measures activated, interior security systems sealed off access routes, and emergency communication protocols sent detailed tactical information directly to Pacific Fleet Command. Agent Price coordinated with the approaching backup teams while monitoring the attackers' communications. They're not just after the encryption keys anymore. They know about Project Cerberus, and they want Rex. Sarah looked down at the puppy, who was continuing to operate defensive systems with remarkable skill despite his injured leg. They want the technology, the training protocols, the enhancement systems, the entire program. Dr. Walsh checked her medical equipment as the sounds of battle intensified above them. If they capture Rex, they could reverse engineer the entire Project Cerberus program. They're not taking him, Sarah said firmly. She moved to the weapons storage area and began preparing for close-quarters combat. Rex, how many more defensive systems are available? The puppy barked twice and activated a display showing the complete defensive capabilities of the house. Sarah was amazed to see the extent of what her father had prepared. Hidden weapon systems, automated defensive measures, even escape tunnels that connected to the neighboring properties. The assault team had breached the main floor and was attempting to access the basement. Sarah could hear them moving carefully through the upper levels, checking each room with professional thoroughness. Agent Price positioned herself at the basement entrance with her weapon drawn. They'll be here in about 2 minutes. Sarah activated the final emergency protocol. Steel blast doors sealed the hidden room while independent life support systems came online. The command center was now completely isolated from the rest of the house, with its own power supply, air filtration, and communication systems. Rex moved to a specialized device that Sarah had not noticed before. It looked like a sophisticated transmitter connected to his collar enhancement system. When he activated it, every display in the room showed the same message: Project Cerberus Emergency Extraction Protocol initiated. What does that mean? Dr. Walsh asked. Agent Price listened to her earpiece and smiled grimly. Military response teams are converging on this location from 3 directions. Fighter aircraft are being scrambled from McCord Field. Rex just declared this a matter of national security and requested immediate military intervention. Sarah felt a mixture of admiration and amazement. Her young partner had not only defended their position and coordinated backup support, he had escalated the entire situation to the highest levels of military command. The sounds of battle above them intensified as the attackers encountered the remaining defensive systems. Sarah could hear explosions, automatic weapons fire, and the distinctive whine of military aircraft approaching at high speed. Rex sat beside her and looked up with those intelligent brown eyes. Despite everything they had endured, despite his injury and the stress of combat, the puppy still wanted the approval and affection of the human he had been trained to protect. Sarah knelt down and gently petted his head. You did good, boy. Very good. Your father would be proud. The puppy's tail wagged slightly, and for a moment he was just a young dog enjoying the attention of someone he trusted. Then, military aircraft roared overhead, and the sounds of the assault above them changed to the coordinated movements of professional soldiers securing the area. Rex's emergency protocols had worked. Military response teams had arrived in force. Agent Price monitored the tactical communications. Hostiles are withdrawing under covering fire. Air support is pursuing the helicopter. Ground teams are securing the perimeter. Sarah realized that the immediate battle was over, but the larger war was just beginning. Someone with access to the highest levels of naval intelligence had orchestrated a sophisticated attack on a military asset. They had nearly succeeded in capturing or destroying one of the most advanced military working dogs ever created. Rex moved to the communication console and began transmitting tactical information to the arriving military teams. Real-time positions of withdrawing hostiles, identification of weapons and equipment, detailed documentation of the entire attack sequence. He's providing intelligence for the pursuit teams, Agent Price observed, making sure they can track down everyone involved in the attack. Sarah watched her remarkable partner work with professional efficiency and felt a deep sense of respect for the training and dedication that had created such an extraordinary animal. Rex was not just a dog with technological enhancements. He was a true military asset, capable of independent decision-making and complex tactical operations. But he was also a young animal who had been injured while protecting her, and who trusted her completely despite the dangerous situation they faced together. As military personnel secured the house and began their investigation, Sarah realized that she and Rex had become more than just a temporary partnership. They were now a team, bonded by combat, and united in their mission to identify and stop whoever was trying to destroy Project Cerberus. The battle for the house was over, but the hunt for the traitor was just beginning. The secure briefing room at Naval Intelligence Headquarters buzzed with controlled tension as Admiral Sarah Mitchell reviewed the evidence that Rex had helped gather during their 3-day investigation. The young German shepherd sat beside her chair, his injured leg nearly healed, and his enhanced collar systems interfacing directly with the room's tactical displays. Commander David Hayes, the Pacific Fleet's intelligence director, looked increasingly uncomfortable as Sarah presented her findings to the assembled senior officers. Admiral Mitchell, these are serious accusations against a respected member of our intelligence community. The evidence is clear, Sarah replied, activating a wall display that showed financial transactions, communication records, and surveillance footage. Captain Elizabeth Thornton has been selling Project Cerberus intelligence to foreign operatives for the past 8 months. Rex activated his collar system, and additional data streams appeared on the displays. Bank records, encrypted communications, travel patterns that correlated with known intelligence breaches. The young dog had spent the past 72 hours using his enhanced analytical capabilities to piece together a comprehensive case against the traitor. Agent Price stood at the back of the room, monitoring secure communications on her tablet. Captain Thornton disappeared from her quarters 6 hours ago, approximately 30 minutes after Admiral Mitchell's investigation was uploaded to the intelligence database. She knew we were getting close, Sarah said grimly. Rex tracked her electronic signature through multiple security systems before she went dark. Captain Thornton had been the perfect inside source for foreign intelligence services. As Deputy Director of Pacific Fleet Communications, she had access to encryption protocols, operational schedules, and personnel information for all senior officers. Her security clearance and trusted position had made her virtually invisible as she systematically betrayed her country and her fellow officers. Rex suddenly stood up and moved to a specific communication console. His enhanced sensors had detected something that the human operators had missed. The puppy pressed a control with his paw, and immediately the room's displays showed new information. Signal intercept, Agent Price announced, reading the data streams. Captain Thornton is attempting to access a secure communication satellite. Location, international waters, approximately 40 nautical miles west of Seattle. Admiral James Crawford, the Pacific Fleet commander, leaned forward with interest. She's trying to evacuate by submarine. Classic intelligence extraction protocol. Sarah was already analyzing the tactical situation. Rex, can you track the communication signature? The puppy barked once and activated additional sensors. Within seconds, the display showed a precise location coordinate and movement vector for the submarine that was attempting to extract Captain Thornton. Commander Hayes looked amazed. That dog just did signal analysis that would normally require a team of specialists and several hours of computer processing. Rex is not just a dog anymore, Sarah replied with obvious pride in her partner. He's a military asset with capabilities that exceed most human operators. Rex moved to another console and began transmitting coordinate information to Pacific Fleet vessels in the area. The puppy was not just providing intelligence. He was coordinating an active pursuit operation. Agent Price monitored the tactical communications. USS Hampton is responding, along with 2 destroyer escorts. They have a clear intercept vector on the submarine. Sarah felt the satisfaction of a successful hunt, but she also knew that Captain Thornton's capture would only be the beginning. The foreign intelligence services that had recruited her would simply find another source unless Project Cerberus was completely restructured. Rex returned to his position beside Sarah's chair and looked up at her with those intelligent brown eyes. The puppy had accomplished everything he had been trained for and more. He had protected his assigned officer, detected and neutralized threats, gathered intelligence, and coordinated military operations at a level that most human agents could not match. What happens to Rex now? Dr. Walsh asked. She had been monitoring the puppy's condition throughout the investigation and had become deeply attached to the remarkable animal. Admiral Crawford answered the question with obvious respect for what Rex had accomplished. Rex will continue to serve with Admiral Mitchell as a permanent partnership. Project Cerberus is being restructured based on their success, with enhanced dogs paired with specific officers for long-term assignments. Sarah reached down and gently petted Rex's head. Would you like that, boy? Want to stay with me? Rex's tail wagged enthusiastically, and he barked once with clear approval. Despite all his training and technological enhancements, he was still a young dog who had formed a strong bond with the human he had been assigned to protect. Agent Price received a communication update. USS Hampton reports successful intercept of the submarine. Captain Thornton is in custody, along with 3 foreign intelligence operatives. The briefing room erupted in quiet satisfaction as the assembled officers realized that the immediate threat had been neutralized. But Sarah was already thinking about the larger implications of what they had discovered. How many other inside sources might there be? She asked. Captain Thornton had access to information about all Project Cerberus assets. If she compromised the program, Rex suddenly moved to the communication console again, his enhanced sensors detecting new activity. The displays showed multiple alert signals from Project Cerberus assets throughout the Pacific region. 8 other protection dogs are reporting contact with hostile forces, Agent Price announced. Coordinated attacks on their assigned officers, all happening simultaneously. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. Captain Thornton's capture had triggered a final desperate attempt by foreign intelligence services to eliminate all remaining Project Cerberus assets before they could be relocated or reassigned. Admiral Crawford was already coordinating responses. All available military assets are being deployed to support the protection teams. But some of the attacks are in remote locations where backup will take hours to arrive. Rex activated his collar system and began transmitting command signals to the other protection dogs. Real-time coordination data, tactical advice, support protocols that would help the isolated team survive until military backup could arrive. Sarah watched her partner coordinate operations across thousands of miles with the efficiency of a senior military commander. Rex was not just protecting her anymore. He was helping to save the entire Project Cerberus program and the lives of everyone involved. Dr. Walsh monitored the communication systems with amazement. He's providing medical advice to injured dogs, tactical guidance for defensive operations, even emotional support for animals whose handlers have been killed. Rex has become the operational commander for all Project Cerberus assets, Agent Price observed. He's essentially running a distributed military operation using enhanced dogs as his field operatives. Sarah felt a deep sense of pride and amazement as she watched Rex work. The young dog who had saved her life in a Seattle alley had evolved into something unprecedented in military history. He was an animal with the tactical awareness of a special operations commander and the loyalty of the best military working dog. Over the next 6 hours, Rex coordinated successful defensive operations that saved the lives of 5 officers and their protection dogs. His real-time intelligence and tactical guidance enabled isolated teams to hold defensive positions until military backup could arrive. When the crisis finally ended, Admiral Crawford addressed the room with obvious respect for what had been accomplished. Project Cerberus has been completely vindicated. The enhanced dogs performed beyond all expectations, and their partnership with human officers proved to be more effective than anyone anticipated. Sarah looked down at Rex, who was finally resting beside her chair with his head on his paws. The puppy looked exhausted but satisfied, like a young soldier who had successfully completed his first major operation. "What about the other dogs who lost their handlers?" she asked. "They'll be reassigned to new officers, with Rex serving as the operational coordinator for the entire program," Admiral Crawford replied. His performance during this crisis has established new protocols for how enhanced military animals can be integrated into complex operations. Rex looked up at Sarah and barked softly, as if asking for permission to continue his expanded role. She reached down and scratched behind his ears. "You ready for more responsibility, boy? Want to be the boss of all the other dogs?" Rex's tail wagged enthusiastically, and Sarah realized that her remarkable partner was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. 3 months later, Sarah watched from the observation deck of her new command center as Rex supervised training exercises for 12 new Project Cerberus teams. The young dog who had saved her life had become the operational heart of the most advanced military working dog program in history. Each morning, Rex would review tactical reports from protection teams around the world, coordinate training protocols, and provide guidance for dogs and handlers facing complex operational challenges. He had evolved from a single protection asset into a military leader whose influence extended across the entire Pacific Fleet. But every evening, he would return to Sarah's side and resume his role as her loyal companion and partner. Despite all his responsibilities and advanced capabilities, Rex never forgot that his primary mission was to protect the human who had given him trust, respect, and affection when he was just an injured puppy in the rain. Sarah often thought about that night in Seattle when Rex had first appeared to warn her about the approaching danger. Neither of them could have imagined that their partnership would lead to revolutionizing military working dog operations and saving dozens of lives. Rex looked up at her with those intelligent brown eyes and barked once softly. In his expression, she could see the same loyalty and determination that had driven him to risk his life protecting her. But now there was also confidence and authority that came from successfully commanding complex military operations. "Good boy, Rex," she said, reaching down to pet his head. "Very good boy." Rex's tail wagged with the simple pleasure that came from earning the approval of the human he trusted most. Despite everything he had accomplished and all the responsibilities he now carried, he was still a dog who valued the affection and respect of his partner above all else. Together, they had created something unprecedented in military history, a true partnership between human and enhanced animal that combined tactical brilliance with unwavering loyalty. Rex had saved Sarah's life, and she had given him the opportunity to become everything his training and enhancements had made possible. As the sun set over Elliott Bay, Sarah and Rex prepared for another evening of coordinating worldwide operations and protecting the officers and animals under their command. They had found their purpose together, and they were ready for whatever challenges the future might bring.